Today's sermon comes with a spoiler alert. You'll be familiar with the idea of a spoiler alert if you engage in social media, or if you've ever discussed a film or a book with a group of people. It's the part of the story that perhaps some of your audience hasn't yet seen or heard or known about, and you give someone a warning to say close your ears at this point or switch off or whatever it might be, because you're going to be talking about something that comes at an important moment in a story. Well, I think you could argue that from John chapter 2, our reading today, there should really be a spoiler alert attached to this reading, because at the beginning of this gospel, John is unfolding some of the most important themes that he is going to be talking about as he explores the life of Jesus. But really, you'd actually probably have to hear the whole story to pick them up, and to try and work out what John is hinting at in this passage. But sitting in the wings, waiting for the right time to burst forth, there is an event to come in John's Gospel that is going to change everything. Something happens in this story of Jesus that could never have been anticipated, but which means that the future is completely transformed. And by now you might guess what I'm talking about. Well, that something is. It is resurrection. We must listen to this story of John chapter 2 with two things in mind at the same time. Firstly, we have the details of a wedding in Cana. But then there is also this vision of an ultimate end in which heaven and earth become one. We have the small, the local, the human scale, but we also have the big, the universal, the divine scale. And in this story, those two things collide. So it begins as Jesus and his disciples have been invited to a wedding in Cana. Now, weddings were really important events in the time of Jesus, and they would often take multiple days to properly celebrate. And so the whole village would get involved, and there'd be food and, importantly, lots of wine. But this wedding on that day had encountered a problem. The wine has run out. You might want to ask how long the party had been going for that the wine had run out. But anyway, this is the problem. And it's a problem because the party is not yet finished. There's more celebrating to be done, but the wine is gone. And so Jesus' mother mentions it to him, and he responds at first by saying that has nothing to do with me. But then he decides it does in fact have something to do with him. So he calls over the servants and he gives them a strange instruction. Fill the water jars with water, which they did. But those jars weren't actually for drinking water. They were actually used more often for ceremonial washing, which is why they contained so much water. But this water was about to be transformed. And as the master of the banquet, the master of ceremonies, took a ladle of it to his lips, he realized that he wasn't drinking water, but he was drinking the finest wine that he had ever tasted. And he couldn't believe that they had kept this wine until the end. I mean, who keeps the best wine until the end when everyone has already drunk so much of the other stuff? Why would you do that? And then the story ends. There is, in this story, no recognition from the crowd that Jesus has done something amazing. No new disciples, apparently. No awe, no wonder. Just a crowd of people who are grateful that an amazing wine is now being provided, and in quantities they couldn't have possibly dreamed about. As we dig into this story, we begin to discover in it layers of meaning. It is what John calls a sign. Those are the words he uses for Jesus's miracle stories in his gospel. There are 7 of them in total if you read through the Gospel of John. So signs are visible things that point beyond themselves to a greater truth. So the question we ask really is, what does this first sign tell us? What is it pointing us to? And in some ways I've already spoiled it. I've already given you the answer. Resurrection. This is a story that loudly speaks about what God is going to be up to in and through Jesus. He has come to bring transformation, to take the raw ingredients of our lives, this world, and turn them into something glorious. And it all starts with a problem. The wine has run out. Somehow those words, I think, describe our experience, particularly these last few years. And they describe them really well, I think. For me anyway, the wine has run out. Sounds very pertinent to our experience. The celebrations of the past are over. The river of joy and light seems to be like a little dribble rather than a fast-flowing stream. It might not seem like a great tragedy at first, running out of wine. We can survive without it. But in the context of this story, it really is a tragedy. Because the wine represents joy, it represents life, it represents celebrating that new marriage, the abundant goodness of God's creation. To say that that has run out is a shocking thing indeed. It's like saying life itself is running dry. Those words perhaps might resonate with you. As you consider the days that are ahead, you might ask the question, will the wine ever return? You might wonder if the vitality of life is behind you now, rather than in front of you. And the people that Jesus was celebrating with that day, they understood what that meant too. When is God going to set his people free? These people lived poor lives under occupation. Would that last forever? They were tasting the last of the wine. And perhaps they were feeling this is it. I think it's really important that we don't rush past that part of the story. I think we should allow those words to resonate within us, to maybe offer us language for the fears that we carry with us in our hearts. We should perhaps ask ourselves, do I feel like the wine has run out? And as we start asking that question, we should perhaps also feel a new boldness to bring all of those things in prayer. To be like Mary, who when she realizes the wine has run out, she goes to Jesus and she tells him. What might that mean for you? Where are the places in your life where you are feeling parched, empty, like the wine is running out? But then Jesus does something amazing with all this emptiness. And it begins with water. A lot of water. Isn't it interesting that last week we met Jesus in the water of baptism and transformation occurred? And that little bit of ordinary water became a place where something new was born. And now here in John's Gospel, this extraordinary event happens. The miraculous begins with ordinary water. The servants go and they fill up water and they fill up the jars to overflowing, over the brim. And something happens in that water that turns it into wine. The miracle happens almost without anyone knowing it's happened at all. Everyone else is going about their lives, but here in Cana at this wedding to a few guests, something amazing has been revealed. A new age has begun to dawn. Because the wine had run out, everything had come to an end. They had lost hope, but now one who can bring amazing things has come. And he has come to take the ordinary material of our lives and transform them into the best wine. And that is the symbolism of water into wine. It's telling you and it's telling me that despite our emptiness, despite the ways we feel beyond change, despite the ordinariness of our lives, when Jesus comes to us, there can be transformation that you never even imagined was possible. The water of our lives can turn into wine. The empty places can flow with an unexpected abundance. And that is what resurrection is all about. God taking the empty jars of our lives and filling this whole world with new wine. He comes to this broken place that we all are in, and he makes it a container that is worthy of his glory. He comes to me in my despair, in my shame, in my smallness, and he tells me that I too can be part of a new thing, a future which is greater than my past. So what does that look like for you? Where is the water of your life that Jesus can fill up your jar to overflowing with new wine? Let me encourage you to sit with those images this week, to take some time in prayer and ask God to bring transformation to those parts of your life that are feeling dry and empty and without hope. Ask him to fill you with that water and transform it into wine. So there's one more thing to draw from this story, if you'll forgive that pun. When the servants have filled up the water, Jesus instructs them to draw some of it and take it to the master of the banquet, the master of ceremonies. And he's astonished, and then the bridegroom is astonished, and they all start tasting this wonderful wine. And there was a lot of it, much more than was necessary. So why so much wine? Why not just transform one jar of water? I think the abundance in this story is because that wine was made for sharing. No one could ever drink all of that wine by themselves. The motive, the vision of this is clear. Invite everyone you know to come and taste this wine. Let others join in with that abundance that has come. Let them try the best wine that they've ever tasted before. And I think you can probably see where this is all going, because when our lives are transformed, when the water of us is turned into wine, Jesus invites us to draw out from that and share it with others. Because there are plenty of people around us who also know what it is like to run out, to be empty, to be a jar with no water, to have no hope for the future. So what would it mean for you to share something of the hope that you've been given? What would it look like for you to share your joy, your abundance, and bring transformation in other people's lives too? What if we could say, come and taste the best wine that you'll ever drink? This was the first sign that Jesus did, through which he revealed his glory. That's how John ends this passage. And I think we might do well to remember that the sign itself is never the end of the story, because a sign always points us to what is to come. The abundance has only just begun. We have had the first sip of that new wine, but we want more. There is a great wedding banquet to come in the future when we will finally taste the wine of the kingdom, with Jesus at a celebration that will never have an ending. So today we've glimpsed it yet again. We have seen afresh that sign of the kingdom, the sign of the glory of Jesus. We have once again had hope reignited within us for the future. So my prayer is that you'll take that and kindle that hope within you this week. Follow the sign where it's pointing you, and offer something of that hope to those that you encounter too. Amen.